YouTube, it's Charlie from Reader Turned Writer, and today I'm talking about how I brainstormed my current book. I thought it might be interesting to just talk about how I came up with the original idea for my book, what kind of inspired me to write this idea, and how I developed it into enough content to make a 65,000 word book. Just a little background really quick if you didn't know, this is my first book, so I'm currently starting the process on my next book, and it already looks a little different because of course that's just how it goes. But it was the first full-length novel that I have actually completed even a single draft for. I am currently on the fourth draft. It's kind of getting muddy now what draft I'm on in revisions, but I am currently on the last stretch of revisions before I do beta readers, so I feel like I'm getting closer to having a complete novel. Before I wrote this novel, I had tried and failed many times to write a novel. Usually I would stop because what was in my head didn't make it onto the page the same way, of course, because ideas are never the same as what you end up writing, even the final draft. But that was really discouraging to me, and I had to learn a whole bunch of different things like my writing style and fix my mindset and get a writing group and just different things that helped me to actually finish a draft. And now I feel like I can go on and write another draft because I have learned those things. But the mindset that I was in before I wrote this was one of, well, I'm not a writer, I'm not going to write books. That was kind of sad because I love books. I love reading. When I would read books, or I'd watch like Brandon Sanderson lectures online or lessons from a screenplay or something, and they would talk about the craft behind the writing, and I would get really excited and I really was passionate about that, but I didn't know how to make myself sit down and write. And that was kind of where I was at. I was pregnant with my third child, and my husband is a creative as well, although his focus is more on video games. He found this idea on YouTube that got him really excited about coming up with ideas, and it was called the butt design method. Then he heard someone else talking about it and in the game design context, and they called them hooks. And a hook is just taking something standard, something that's well known, and adding a twist or a surprise element to it. As he was talking about it with my brother-in-law, because they work together a lot to make games, as they were talking about it, I was there and he was talking with me about it a lot too, and I was getting really excited about it, and it made me want to try and write a book. And I thought, well, maybe this is it. Maybe I couldn't write a book before because I just didn't have a good idea. So I decided to commit to writing a book, and I brainstormed with my husband. I remember we were out in the creek at his parents' house. They live like in this place where you can go out into the trees for like walking for like 1 minute. It feels like you're in the middle of nowhere, and there's this creek that runs through it. We were out there with our kids, and I was standing in the creek, and I remember it being super hot, and I was really pregnant at this point. I was really pregnant, and so it was really hot. And so I was wading in the creek and watching my kids play and trying to stay in the shade. And I remember sitting and brainstorming with my husband different ideas of what I could do. What I decided is I really like fairy tale retelling, so I decided I would start with a fairy tale retelling because that way I already have the standard and all I had to do was find a twist. And so we kind of talked about different fairy tales that I could use, and I decided to go with Rapunzel because I love Tangled. It's my favorite Disney movie, and I remember really liking Rapunzel, the story, when I was a little girl, and so I decided to go with Rapunzel. But that's all I had. I didn't really have a twist yet. I didn't have the unexpected. I just had the standard. It was kind of crazy for a while because we had a newborn, but I had that desire in the back of my mind where I wanted to write and I wanted to do Rapunzel, and I liked the hook idea and stuff. And I was watching some things on writing, like from lessons from the screenplay, on how to do like the first setup, the character arc and stuff, and the lie that the character believes, and all of that stuff. Just so you know, if you're going to go further into the video, there are going to be spoilers for my book in this video. So I was reading one night in bed next to my husband, and he was reading a book too, and I was reading a fairy tale retelling, and it was a Sleeping Beauty one. And as I was reading it, I was like, oh, I know where this is going, and this is a really cool plot twist. This is going to be really cool. And I read, and it wasn't the plot twist. I was totally wrong. But I was like, this is a cool plot twist. So what I thought was going to happen was a character that we see in a typical role. I thought that the book was leading us to believe that they actually were in that typical role, and then they were going to switch it on us at the last minute. And I thought that was kind of cool. So then I started thinking about Rapunzel and the story of Rapunzel and how I could do that with different characters. And I was like, you know, it would be kind of cool if you're reading the book and you thought that Gothel was the bad guy, because we've been preconditioned from the original fairy tale to think that Gothel was the bad guy, but then at the end we find out that she's actually the good guy. And I really liked that idea, so I latched onto it. So that was my main idea of what I was going to write. So that idea was kind of like the seed that the rest of my book kind of blossomed out of. What I did next was I went out to dinner with my husband and we did a brainstorming session together without the kids. And I brought my notebook and I just was like, okay, so if she's the bad guy, how would that work? You know, or if she's not the bad guy, how would I make that work? And I'm like, you know, she's supposed to steal Rapunzel from her parents, but I don't really want to make Rapunzel's parents the bad guys. So then I was like, okay, well, I will have somebody steal Rapunzel first, and then Gothel can actually save her from those people but not give her back to her parents. So then Gothel actually did end up rescuing Rapunzel, but then her parents aren't the bad guy. My husband was kind of helping me, and he thought that I should do a dystopian, and I wasn't really sure what to do, and I felt intimidated by any genre, so I was like, okay, I'll go with dystopian. And so what we came up with is that Rapunzel was stolen because of her hair. Okay, so actually back up. So the hook that I have is a fairly good hook, you know, Gothel actually, you think she's the bad guy, but she's the good guy, but it's a plot twist, so it's not something that I can tell people to try and like sell my book to them. And so we were like, well, we need another hook. And so we just, going with the dystopian theme, we're like, okay, well, she's stolen as a baby by someone. Why is she stolen in this dystopian world? Oh, I know. Her hair, it can be explained through genetic modification. So what if she's stolen so they can do research on her for genetic modifications, but then Gothel steals her away from there to save her from that. And then we went a little bit further and we ended up working on Gothel's backstory a little bit, and Gothel steals her. Gothel actually works at the facility that does the research, but then she ends up stealing Rapunzel because she had her own baby that died before, and so now she wants to raise Rapunzel as her own. From there we were able to take like the genetic modifications and stuff and come up with a good theme or character arc or flaw or whatever you want to call it for Rapunzel, and that was that we actually started with a different flaw, and that was that what was the different flaw? It was a little bit more complex. Something about not wanting to be different, how your differences don't, I think it was that she believed that differences were bad, and then the person who actually stole her actually believed that as well. That differences made you bad, but then were bad, and that you should try and have a uniform society. But as I was writing the book, it just wasn't working very well to have that flaw, and I don't think it fit very well into Rapunzel's character and what she grew to be, so her flaw has actually ended up being unconditional love. Rapunzel in my book believes that you need to gain love, that you have to do things in order to be loved, you have to be worthy of the love, instead of being able to be unconditionally loved. So that's kind of the theme of the book that grew from the fact that she's different and she has these differences that she sees as flaws and that she needs to hide and earn the love of the people around her, including Gothel. So then next I kind of briefly outlined my novel, and I'm going to do a lot more of an in-depth outline this time, but I didn't really know a lot about story structure or character arc or anything when I was writing this. I was kind of learning as I went. And I hadn't read a lot of the books that I have read now, which I haven't read a ton, but I have read more, and I feel like I understand a lot more about how to make a story and how to create a plot and tension and character and all of that stuff. And obviously I'm still way a novice and still learning. As I was writing, I also brainstormed a lot. One of the things that I would do as I was writing is if I felt like I was really stuck, I would have like a brainstorming session with my husband where I told him, you know, I'm feeling stuck, this is where I am at, and then we would talk about, well, does it need to be like this? One thing, for instance, I was really stuck for some reason on the fact that the kids that she meets were going to school. And Ben was like, and it was like really causing me trouble, and Ben was like, well, do they have to be going to school? Could it be like summer vacation or something? And that like fixed all of the problems that I was having, and then I was able to write a whole bunch more before running into more issues. And so I was able to do brainstorming sessions both with my husband and with my writing group. My writing group has actually helped me a ton with brainstorming. Even as they're reading it, they might say something like, what if, you know, she ends up doing this? And there have been, I can think of 3 different, well, one big thing and two smaller things that I have added that I love about the book that came from ideas that my writing group had as well for my novel. And so my novel is definitely a collection of all of the people, my writing group and my husband mainly, because they're the people that have shared the writing journey with me. So yeah, so now I'm just in the editing phase, and of course you have to, at least for me, I am still kind of brainstorming as I edit, because you come up against problems and then you have to come up with solutions to those problems. One of the biggest revisions that I had to brainstorm was the end. Basically, I wrote my book and then I read Save the Cat Writes a Novel, and then I realized that I was totally missing the middle of my book and had to brainstorm some things to fill in there. And then the ending, I had the ending, but it was not very good. And so what I did, I actually ended up filling in a lot of the middle and totally rewriting the ending. And that took a lot of brainstorming, where I would think about what Save the Cat was saying and how I could change the ending, and I thought about it for a really, really long time. And then I had some ideas, brought them to my writing group, they helped me brainstorm, and then I thought about them some more, and then I brought them back to my writing group, and it was kind of a long process, but I feel like my ending is a lot better now than it was before. Anyway, so now I'm just in the revising process. I'm finishing that up, and then I'll get beta reader feedback, make those small changes, and then hopefully it'll be ready for me to send out to agents and stuff, and that would be really fun. So yeah, with my brainstorming process, it was kind of like, and this is probably how it is with every book, but hopefully it gets a little bit less chaotic because I know what I'm doing more as I write more books. But it was very much a long, winding road to get to where I am now. I used a lot of people, my husband and my writing group mainly. I read books and learned about story structure and character arcs and internal struggles and all of those things to help me come up with ideas. I feel like the structure of that helps me to be creative. I spent a lot of time just thinking, or I would have an idea and then not think about it, and then later when I was reading or even just randomly, the idea would come back to me. And that's kind of my brainstorming process so far with this first book. So far with my next book, actually I'll just have another video where I talk about my brainstorming process with that when I get further into it. Yeah, so I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about. So let me know in the comments below what your brainstorming process is like, or your past brainstorming processes have been like, or if you have any tips for brainstorming, I would love to hear those in the comments below. I'm sure everybody else would. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe for lots of writing content. Thank you so much for watching my video. I will see you in the next one.